Rahmatullah wa barakatuhu. Man was created from a fistful of earth. In the earth are some of the lowest creatures in creation. Worms live in the earth. And man is capable of being worm-like. Yet man is also capable of being higher than the angels. What are the influences that bring you down to being a worm or lift you up to being above an angel? Man is fragile. He's subject to all the diseases in the world, both mental and physical. He's subject to hunger. He's subject to old age. He's subject to broken bones and loss of eyesight and loss of hearing. All of the things that the body gives you also are subject to being taken away. And of course, the body is also subject to a demise. There's a limit to the term that this body has, and a limit to the existence that this body has. So man goes into the world facing all the limitations that are given to him from his own body, and then he faces all of the limitations and difficulties that are given to him by way of his environment. Depending upon where you live, you can be born into conflagrations where people are killed all around you. You can be born into wars. You can be born into natural disasters. You can be born into places where the heat is overwhelming and droughts are common and food is unavailable. You can be born into places where the cold is overwhelming and food is difficult to obtain. There are all these difficulties that man is placed into. All these situations that are most difficult to live with, and that lead to a loss of vigor, a loss of spirit, a loss of dignity, a loss of being able to cope with your own existence. So in the middle of all this, in the middle of all these difficulties, in the middle of situations like we recently had in Cambodia, like we recently had in Rwanda, like we have in the Sudan, like we have in Iraq, the kinds of situations that we have all over the world that make life really difficult. In the midst of all these diseases that plague mankind, how does man handle this? How does he come to raise himself up, to bring himself into a space that can cope with all of this and take care of this and live an exalted life? How does he do it? Well, he does it through somehow rising above that which attempts to keep him down. By rising above all of the difficulties and ignoring them. By not allowing them to penetrate the truth of his self and bringing his own being into a higher status. This, of course, has to be taught. People have to begin to understand their higher nature. They have to begin to understand what their higher nature is and what they're capable of while they are in their higher nature. Within us, we have a lower nature and a higher nature. We need to be able to become in contact with that higher self. And what is that? And how does that come about? We are made up of two souls. The Ru, which is the undifferentiated soul, that's part of our connection to everything, and the Nefs, which are our lower self, the animate soul, the soul that drives our being in an animalistic way, because we are partially animal. That animal soul has to go through various adaptations and changes and recognition in order that it will stop us, in order that it won't stop us from being in touch with our not individuated soul, the soul that's unified in existence. So we have this individuated self and we have the non-individuated self. We have duality and we have unity. And we have the forces that pull us towards duality and the forces that pull us towards unity. If we only know duality, we then stay subject to all of the things I mentioned, all of the difficulties I mentioned. We stay subject to them because we differentiate ourselves and make ourselves separate from reality and from truth. But if we can move towards that undifferentiated portion of ourselves that's part of the eternal being, part of all that there is, then we go from worm to above angel. But the work has to be done on this lower self, this nafs, because that is what keeps us separated. So at first, the work that the nafs does is entirely separated. It takes care of our individual needs. It takes care of maintaining this body. And that becomes its first and foremost job. Very similar to that which an animal does. It maintains itself. Somewhere along the line, this portion of ourselves recognizes the limited kind of existence that it has. That its existence is about putting food in its mouth and putting shelter over its head and somehow fulfilling its own desires. When that recognition comes, we go into a second stage, which is the nefs in the mode of recognizing that there's more to its life than what it has been striving for its entire existence. When this recognition occurs, we begin to look for answers about existence. This second phase of the nafs leads to the third phase, which is this animal soul, this lower soul at peace, at rest. When it gets to that point, it now does not interfere with your ability to touch your own Ru, your own undifferentiated soul, and the veils that have been created in this world a lot through your own doing because of your continuous need to fulfill the needs of the nafs and your constant effort to fulfill the needs of the nafs. These veils have been created which keep you from your true self, which is this undifferentiated self. And it's not till you become at peace with your existence in this world, at rest, so that all of the driving forces that push this lower self no longer get energy from you, no longer get you to fall to their needs and make effort in their direction. Effort changes. Effort changes from fulfilling differentiated needs towards finding God. The one undifferentiated existence that is throughout all of existence and all of humanity. And when that can occur, then you touch a different part of your own existence. And this is the existence that Allah created, that He asked that the angels bow down to. But we have many stages in our existence. We have many portions in our existence. We have many possibilities in our existence. We can be animals, and we can be any of those animals, or we can put those animals to rest. They need to be tamed. They need to be controlled. They need to become docile. And when that occurs within us through the effort of non-reaction to all of the uprisings that occur within us, then we can become a being who sees clearly and enters into being what humanity is supposed to be. There are an entire realm of things that change once that happens. Your interaction with others changes. Your interaction with yourself changes. Your thought processes change. What's important to you as a being changes. And this is the actual bringing into action the way that a true human being is. So first, we need to learn that such a thing exists. We have to understand why we are not that. We have to learn what it is that we have to know to become that. And then slowly, we have to work on becoming that. And that's the work of Sufism. To go from insan to insan kamil, to go from man to true man, to stop the influences of the worm creatures and take on the influences of Allah. If man is capable of being worm-like or godlike, which do we choose to become? But in making the decision to become godlike, you also have to take on the aspect of doing godlike things, doing godlike actions, having godlike qualities. And if you can't do that, you can't experience the elevation that is the birthright of man. You can't experience the exaltation that is the birthright of man. You can't experience the glory that is the birthright of man. You can't experience the treasure that Allah has put aside for you because you haven't entered into the space that can see, hear, feel, experience that treasure. Because that which can experience that hasn't been developed by you, because you've stopped it through this incredible appetite to experience worm-like pleasures, animal-like pleasures. So, in the way that you have to acquire a taste for certain foods, we have to acquire a taste for Allah. We have to acquire a taste for our higher self. We have to acquire a taste for the treasure that is haq, that is reality. And if we can acquire that taste, then we can go on the road that takes us towards that. So we have to abandon this worldly life. We have to abandon our attachments to all of the things that bring us difficulty. As long as we're attached to the body and this life in this world, we are going to suffer all of the trials and tribulations that are attached to this body. This body is a machine that's going to fade and going to cause us tremendous distress. And if we are attached to the non-distress of this being, then when the distress comes, our entire being will go into the distress. And distress is going to come. So we have to know what's inevitable, and we have to deal with what's inevitable. And what's inevitable is this is all going to disappear. And we need to understand the alternative. And that's why the Sufis say, to die before death is the Sufi way of life. Because we give up all of the things that have been important in this worldly life, and we take on all of the things that come from Allah as if they belonged to us, because in reality, that is our birthright. May this come to pass for each of us. May we understand the difference. May we strive in the correct way. May we go towards Him. Make Him our goal. Make Him our objective. And make that treasure of His that is unending, that which we spend our time and our effort trying to attain. Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen.